What's up, YouTube fam? I appreciate you joining me today. Let me apologize in advance if you see a random cat run by or my dog jump up here or hear any random farm critters outside. There's a storm brewing out there and it's got everybody amped up. Well, life happens, right? Okay, so anyway, my name is Gina Marie, and this is where I like to come to talk about solved and unsolved true crime cases, crime facts and stats, and missing person cases that I don't feel have gotten enough attention on mainstream media. If you're interested in hearing more on these topics, I do hope that you will choose to subscribe to my channel. And also, if you hit that little bell next to the subscribe button, YouTube will notify you whenever I upload new content. Some topics are sensitive to certain viewers. If today's topic or pictures bother you, please click out and join me a different day. Always take care of you. The topics that I discuss are intended for mature audiences only, and viewers' discretion is absolutely and always advised. The Superstition Mountain Range, more commonly referred to by the locals as the Superstitions, is an entire mountain range that is just east of Apache Junction near Phoenix, Arizona. Legend tells of the Lost Dutchman's gold mine hidden somewhere within that 160,000 acres of brutal Arizona desert. The promise of immense riches lures treasure hunters and, unfortunately, continues to claim the lives of those who are eager to strike it rich. Second only to the Grand Canyon, the Superstition Mountain is nearly the most photographed and painted landmark in all of Arizona. It's not the tallest mountain in the Superstition Range, so what makes Superstition Mountain such a popular spot? Well, maybe because of the cougar shadow that only shows itself twice a year. Or maybe it's the legends that are full of riches, deaths, and curses. But before I get into that, let me give you just a quick history lesson about the Superstition Mountain. The Pima tribe arrived in that region around 1400 CE. They called the mountain range Kakatak Tamai, meaning crooked top mountain. By the time Europeans entered the region, the Apache had already inhabited the area. The Apache called the mountain Wikitsawara, which means the rock standing up. They believed that it was home to their thunder god. I hesitate to say what else they are thought to have believed, since everything I found on the subject was written by white people. I can say that the Apache considered, and probably still do, this mountain to be sacred land. It was their home. They were considered by the Spanish and Anglo settlers to be savages that stood in their way to finding gold and riches and land, using the land. Western Apache bands conducted hit and run raids, on settlers and travelers into the 19th century. But what would you do if people of any race came into your home, started stealing, causing destruction, disrespecting your home? Anyways, Marcos de Niza of Spain may have been the first European to see what is now called Superstition Mountain in 1539 during a search for the 7 cities of Cibola. Superstition Mountain was located on the northern frontier of New Spain, and then it fell within the territory of Mexico prior to the end of the Mexican-American War in 1848. Okay, so the mountain became a part of the United States when the border shifted south to the Gila River. So enough about that boring history stuff, although I happen to be fascinated by it. Let's get into the legends of the Peralta and Lost Dutchman's mines. Back when the Superstition Mountain was still a part of the Mexican territory, the Peralta family is said to have gone to the Superstition Mountain and found a mine full of gold. Untold amount of gold in this mine. Huge veins. Legend says they would make trips back and forth to the gold mine that they had found in the mountain whenever they were short on funds, pretty much. But that is until, legend has it, that the Apache slaughtered the entire family except for only 2 members that had gotten away. It's also said that they stopped going back after that. It was either out of fear or out of the inability to locate the gold on their own without their other family members. I think it would be fear, or maybe even a little both. Probably a little of both. In 1946, a police officer from Portland, Oregon named Travis Tomlinson, I think is how you pronounce that, was passing through Arizona on a trip. He pulled off to the side of the road. He says to stretch his legs. I figure he probably had to take a leak, but whatever the reason. And then he was walking around a little bit. And he tripped over the corner of a stone that was sticking up out of the dirt. He thought it looked a lot different than the other stones around, so he decided to dig it out. And then he found more. And today, these are known as the Peralta Stones and are said to have many meanings, depending upon who you ask. One of which is a story claiming that the stones are maps and clues leading to that lost gold mine. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine, but still, the stones are awesome. Take a look at them. Back into the 1800s, okay? The Lost Dutchman's mine was named for a German immigrant named Jacob Waltz, who lived from 1810 to 1891. Now, Jacob, he supposedly discovered this mine, probably the same one that the Peralta family had found. And he kept that location a secret. Like, why would he tell anybody, right? By the way, back then, Dutchman was a common American term for a German, not somebody that was Dutch. Anyways, once Jacob died, tales began of unimaginable wealth that one could have if only they could find the lost Dutchman's mine. And these tales of fortune were combined with tales of curses. Curses because of the Apache thunder god, curses because of the deaths of the Peralta family, and more. Legend has it that anyone searching for the gold, or have found gold, or even that just go out there to venture off and hike in the mountains, they're all doomed to suffer horrible, horrible fates. Remember, this mountain range is located in Arizona. Temps can get really cold at night and sweltering, sweltering hot during the day. Temperatures also can change so quickly. So if you're not dressed correctly or you're not prepared, it could mean disaster. Plus, the terrain can be treacherous, especially if you go off of the trails that are made for people to hike on now. People get lost in there a lot. People also die there. This belief that there is a curse is strengthened every time somebody loses their footing and is injured, dies of dehydration or hypothermia, or becomes lost and never seen again. It has been estimated that at least 600 people have died in them there hills in the past 100 years, many of whom were searching for the lost Dutchman's mine. Some were just out hiking and taking selfies. Obviously, I can't talk about every single case, there are just so many. But I am going to now tell you about some of the people who have died or gone missing in the superstitions. So let's get started. In 1910, a skeleton of a woman was found in a cave way up high on the Superstition Mountains. There was no clothing present at all. The only thing they found with her skeleton was a small bag of gold. No one knows who she was or how she died, even to this day. That's actually really sad. In June of 1931, Adolf Ruth was an elderly man. Armed with just a few belongings and some maps, he was sure those maps were going to lead him to gold. So he ventured off into the superstitions alone never to be seen alive again. It took 6 months for search parties to discover his skull, and then another month for them to find the rest of his skeleton. His cause of death was ruled a suicide. Not everybody believes that one, though. The fact that his skull was found 3/4 of a mile away from the rest of his remains could have been attributed to scavengers, but there were other theories about the nefarious circumstances surrounding Adolf's death, like murder or the curse, especially since there were 2 bullet holes in his skull. And I'm guessing it's pretty hard to shoot yourself twice in the head, right? Not to mention the fact that his .44 caliber gun that he had on him was still there and was missing 0 bullets. It was fully loaded. Makes you wonder. James Cravey was 62 years old when he went off in search of the gold in 1940s. He told everybody that he knew exactly where that lost Dutchman's mine was. He paid a helicopter. It made a big presentation out of it. Everybody knew. He gave interviews and he was telling everybody he knew where he was going and he'd come back the richest man in the world. He had the helicopter drop him off on Superstition Mountain and he was supposed to come back and pick him up 10 days later. When it was time to be picked up, the helicopter returned to the place that he left Mr. Cravey and was supposed to pick him back up. And there he found his campsite. The campsite was intact, but it was only missing 2 days' worth of food. Mr. Cravey was nowhere to be found. After a little waiting, trying to figure out where he went, still nothing. Finally, a search party found his body, but it wasn't until 6 months later that his skull was found. His death was called suspicious, but it was never solved. In 1952, Joseph Kelly of Dayton, Ohio, traveled to the Superstition Mountains in search of the lost mine. He was never seen alive again either. It took 2 years to find his remains. He had been shot in the head. His case was never solved. Also, that same year, 1952, 2 boys from California went missing in the Superstitions. Their bodies have never been found, and no clues to their whereabouts or what happened to them have ever been found either. In 1958, a campsite was found on the northern outskirts of the Superstition Mountain. The people who were staying there were nowhere to be found, but they had left behind cooking supplies, food, personal letters, a Geiger counter, and most disturbingly, blood-soaked blankets were left behind in the campsite. The names and addresses on all of the personal letters and envelopes had been removed. The occupants of the campsite were never found nor identified. July 1961, gold prospector J. Clapp vanished in the Superstitions. Police searched throughout that fall and said it was a very thorough search, and so they ended the search. They found no trace. 3 years later, they found his skeletal remains. Well, all except for his skull, which still, to this day, has never been found. Jesse Capen was 35 years old in 2009. He was obsessed with the lost Dutchman's mine. He owned hundreds of books, hundreds of maps on the subject. He already searched for the mine twice before without any luck, but in 2009, he set off alone to go look for it again. It was 3 years before his remains were ever found. Search and rescue volunteers found him wedged in this crazy tight crevice. It was in such a location that flooding and scavengers couldn't have gotten to him, so that didn't kill him. He had no broken bones or skull damage, so that didn't kill him. His cause of death has not been released. My guess is starvation or dehydration are likely causes. It is possible that he fell from a ledge that was above the crevice that he was found in, and just in some crazy set of circumstances landed in the position he was found, just wedged. Maybe he got more wedged the harder he fought. I don't know. Maybe. In 2009, 3 men were rescued from the Superstition Mountains. The very next year, those same 3 men went back in July of 2010. They were never seen alive again. Their names were Curtis Merworth, 49, Ardeen Charles, 66, and Malcolm Meeks, 41. Their families described them as being gold crazy. The following January 2011, another treasure hunter found the remains of both Mr. Charles and Mr. Meeks. And a week later, Mr. Merworth's remains were found about a half a mile away from their bodies, resting under a tree. It's thought that all 3 men died from the scorching Arizona July heat. July 12th, 2012, Kenny Clark went for a hike and disappeared. 5 days later, his remains were found with an empty bottle of water. Empty bottle that should have had water. Never go out into the Arizona heat with a bottle of water. It's never going to be enough, no matter what you think. April of 2013, Chris Hensley married, father of 2 daughters, ages 5 and 7. He hikes out into the Superstition. 2 weeks later, his remains are found. He had fallen off of a flat face of some massive rock. He slammed and bounced off at least 2 rock ledges on his way down the 200-foot fall. His broken ribs pierced his left lung, but he managed to crawl a few feet and end up underneath a bush before he died. August 12th, 2020. This is Khayman Welch and his uncle. They stopped at the Superstitions on their way home from work. Khayman said he wanted a better view of the sunset, according to his uncle, and then he walked away. And he has not been seen or heard from again. Now, he left his phone, his water, his food, everything behind in the car, okay? He had nothing with him. He was last seen wearing a Ghostbusters t-shirt, black jeans, and black combat boots. Some feel he got lost or injured. Others feel the circumstances are quite suspicious, and even others feel he disappeared on purpose. If you have any information about his location, please contact the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office at 602-876-TIPS, T-I-P-S. That's 602-876-8477. They're still searching for him. In January of 2020, Richard Jacobson fell to his death during a camping trip at Lost Dutchman State Park. He went to the edge of the cliff to take a selfie, and then he slipped and fell 700 feet to his death. Now, you might not believe in curses. You might not believe that there is gold and then there are hills. But at the very least, please believe me when I say that if you plan to hike to the Superstitions for any reason, you must remember that it is dangerous. Take plenty of water, food, survival gear, wear the correct clothing and boots. Weather changes quickly. Rocks crumble, cacti hurt. There are predators, including human beings. There is safety in numbers. Don't live in fear, but don't just wander off unprepared either. Until next time, y'all, you stay safe out there.